Welcome to another class in the series of Ibn Ezra and the Parashat. My name is Rabbi Nathan Dweck, and this week in Parashat Vayiqra, we'll look at two important short comments of Ibn Ezra in the beginning of the Parashat. One on God calling to Moshe to speak to him in Ohel Moed, and the second on the significance of the Korbanot. So the Torah reads in the beginning of the Parashat, Vayiqra el Moshe vaydaber Adonai elav me'ohel moed lemod. Right, God called out to Moshe and spoke to him out of the tent meeting, saying. So Ibn Ezra addresses this point. V'ta'am Vayiqra el Moshe. The reason for Vayiqra el Moshe. Why did God need to call out to Moshe Rabbeinu? Ahar v'lo yachol Moshe. Because we read previously, we ended Sefer Shemot with the Amud Anan in the Mishkan. Right? V'lo yachol Moshe lavo el Ohel Moed. This is Shemot, Perek Mem, verse 35. Why couldn't Moshe enter Ohel Moed? Because of the cloud that rested on it. Uchvod Adonai malet HaMishkan. The glory of God filled the Mishkan. Therefore, Moshe is in this state of waiting for God to call to him. So this Vayiqra is a call to Moshe to enter into the Mishkan. So now Hakavod Kira'o me'ohel moed. God called Moshe from Ohel Moed. She'avo sham v'sham yidaber immo. Now there he would speak to him. Where exactly did God call Moshe into? Ve'akavod lifnim ha'parochet. We know that the kavod of God in the Kodesh HaKodashim, where the Aron is, and the Kaporet and the Kirubim, we know that there is where Hashem would communicate. Torah says, "Vayishma et hakol midaber elav me'ala Kaporet mi ben shenei HaKirubim." The communication would emanate from between the two Kirubim on the Kaporet, on the Aron, and therefore Moshe would enter. V'shamaya Moshe nichnas. Moshe would enter into the Kodesh HaKodashim. Kichen katuv, because that's what's written. V'zetam utmunat Adonai yabit. And this is what's meant by Moshe saw, quote unquote, the image of God. He was very close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he enters into the Kodesh HaKodashim to communicate with God. Now we know the pasuk in Vayiqra, in Aharemot, where God tells Moshe, right, to tell Aaron, ve'al yavo bechol et el hakodesh, to not enter at all times where mi bet la parochet, to the Kodesh HaKodashim. And you find Hazal saying that instruction was to Aaron, ve'al yavo bechol et, but Moshe was not part of that Isur of al yavo bechol et el hakodesh la parochet. Rather, that is where Moshe would communicate with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, would be lifnai v'lifnim, in the inner part of the sanctum in the Kodesh HaKodashim, to communicate with God. Moshe being on that level of that close communication with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is point one. Then Ibn Ezra continues to speak, as he did in the first comments on Vayiqra, about the Korbanot, right? What's the first mitzvah that is given to Moshe? Taber el bnei Yisrael v'talhem Adam ki yakrib mikem, the laws of the Korbanot. Asks Ibn Ezra, v'ta'am lehaskira Korbanot kodem hamitzvot. Why the Korbanot coming to Moshe before the mitzvot? There's tons of mitzvot in Sefer Vayiqra. We have many mitzvot in Parashat Kedoshim, important mitzvot. Why are those not the first mitzvot in Vayiqra? Why the Korbanot? Because God will return back to his holy abode, to his place, not to the Mishkan, not to dwell with Bnei Israel. Im lo yishmeru Torah ha'olah, if they did not follow the laws of the Korbanot. V'chen haya, and that is what happened. First, we're going to focus on where did that happen. Well, Ibn Ezra brings proof, as Rafitih, he proves from Hosea Perek He, chapter 5 in Hosea, which addresses the Kohanim, who to them the mishpat and judgment was to them. And they neglected the laws of the korbanot. And God said as a result, Elech ashuba el mekomi. I will go and return to my place. Ad asher shemu ubikshu fanai, till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. As well, in Direi Amim Bet, chapter 29, verses 7 to 9, we see there, they closed the doors to the ulam. They extinguished the nerot of the menorah. They didn't bring ketoret. And olah lo he'elu ba'kodesh Elohei Yisrael. And therefore God was angered against the people, and he gave them in the hands of their enemy, by the sword. Now you ask yourself, so what? Does God need our korbanot? And therefore Ibn Ezra says clearly, halila listarech le'olah. God forbid God would need our korbanot. V'chen katuv, im ed'av lo omar lach, if I'm hungry, I'm not going to tell you. So clearly God doesn't need our korbanot. Clearly throughout the Nevi'im scold the people for bringing the korbanot. Why? Because they brought it without meaning. And we know that the korbanot had important meaning to them. We see it throughout the Tanakh, and we see it through the word korban, karev. The sword that Ibn Ezra is mentioning here is that we get close to God, venotnim kofed, and we're bringing an atonement for ourselves. He explains here, and through this we escape our nefesh, our soul, ourselves, by getting close to God through the korbanot. The whole purpose of korbanot is getting close. What does it mean that the Kohanim rejected? They didn't teach the people or themselves to do the korbanot properly with the right intention. And that's what's meant by the closing of the mikdash and the closing of the korbanot, is that it wasn't kept properly. The sword of the korban is to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Baal does semicha on the animal, and he understands this animal being a replacement for him. The closeness he gets to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the korban, to the mikdash, to the kedusha of the mikdash. And therefore this sword of the importance of the korban and being able to be a kapara for ourselves, as that word is mentioned many times in the korbanot, can only be done if it's kept mitzvot properly. And therefore these mitzvot of the closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and building that relationship and allowing for the kapara for Am Yisrael every time they bring a korban. Therefore, what would happen? Shekhinah would exit from this world, from our aretz, to go back to God's makom if we don't keep Torah ha'olah. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.